Residents in Florida are outraged and shocked to find that a 15-year-old high school student was followed into the girls' bathroom with as many as 25 high school boys, and many of them appeared to have sex with her on a video that was posted on social media. Now, I should be clear that at this moment, there are not enough details about this story. We don't know how many of the boys had sex with her. We don't know what type of discipline the boys are facing, but we do know that authorities are investigating it for the mere fact that this is the distribution of child pornography because the people involved were underage. Now, video appears to show as many as 25 male students had sex with a 15-year-old female freshman in the girls' bathroom at South Fort Myers High School. According to a police report, the girl confirmed she had sex with a number of willing males in the bathroom at South Fort Myers High on May 17th. The girl and her parents were unwilling to press charges. If a video was taken, one defense attorney says, it's unquestionably child pornography. There's no ambiguity there. Just the sheer volume of participants, allegedly 25 boys, suggests mental health issues with a 15-year-old girl. It should be investigated as a crime, taking advantage of someone with a mental health issue. So we don't know whether or not she has a mental health issue, but one thing that we do know, based on what her mother has said to the press, is that she suffered from being a victim of human trafficking. She was held captive for 2 years, and she was trafficked during those 2 years, and she has been getting treatment for that. She was in a treatment facility for 8 months recently. And of course, when you've been trafficked from the age of 13 to 15, it's going to have or take a huge toll on your mental health. It's a really devastating story. And I think the way that some media outlets cover things like this is pretty despicable, you know, kind of shaming her for what happened, when in reality, we don't know all the details. We don't know what she's gone through in her life.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the articles are using the numbers to capture the headlines as well, right? And I understand people are going to try and sell the story to get views and then to maybe try and bring some much needed light on this issue, like you mentioned. We'll get into the discussion about human trafficking, an issue that is still just kind of papered over in many different countries, and especially in the US. First point I wanted to make, though, is what was staggering about the numbers for me was the fact that there was 25 students able to just kind of go into a bathroom, and now we find out that it was a female bathroom. Is there any sort of surveillance, any sort of, I would say, someone going around the halls, maybe monitoring what's going on in and around or outside the classroom to maybe bring to light that that's not okay to do so, or something might be going wrong if there's 25 students going into a restroom? Like, I don't know how it works in the high schools here, but I understand that when you've got such a large magnitude of students, there should be, I would say, some sort of surveillance, maybe security, or teachers who are monitoring the halls.
So let me give you some more information about that. So based on the reports that we have at the moment, it didn't appear that an administrator or a teacher broke up what was happening. It appeared that this entire incident stopped after the boys had some place to be, okay? Yeah. Which I think is the most troubling part about all of this, because you're right. I mean, we cover these stories where there are schools with zero tolerance policies and kids are being prosecuted for ridiculous things like bringing a plastic knife to school to eat their lunch, right? But then you have cases like this where there's a complete lack of authority in a situation where there should be authority to protect these students. So I don't understand how this could happen.
Yeah, Anna, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's just there was a total lack of oversight, and the details of the story, apparently this girl was going to talk to a boy that she had a crush on, and then just what's the gross part to me is that there's this complacency of the boys that were in the area, that were in the bathroom and maybe weren't engaging in a sex act, but were just filming it, and then they just went about the rest of their day. You know, this shows that there's clearly some mismanagement going on within this school, that this was a major event. And how big are these bathrooms? You know, like, what are we talking about here, that this just was a contained event that they only found out after the fact when the video was getting shared on Snapchat, on different social medias? It's insane.
Yes.
The school has a lot to answer for that this kind of happened behind their back.
And look, I bring up this point every time we have these stories of, you know, school-age kids getting raped, and then people will film the rape and then post it on social media as if it's entertainment. And we always ask, like, how can there be such a lack of sensitivity to such a sensitive topic? Why isn't there this need to help your peers when they're in trouble like this? And a lot of times these stories come out of states where there's a lack of comprehensive sex ed, where there is a lack of conversations about very real issues that high school students should know about, right? A lot of red states refuse to talk about, you know, even the human body, human anatomy, or some of these sensitive topics that need to be addressed. Look, the reason why the issue of rape or the issue of, you know, coercing someone into having sex was something that we were really sensitive about in my school is because we had comprehensive sex ed and we talked about these issues and we realized the severity and the burden that something like this has on someone's life or takes a toll on someone's life. And if you don't have these conversations with people, at the end of the day, we're animals, right? We're animals who need to be educated on these types of issues and need to understand why these issues are as severe as they are. And if these students don't have an understanding of that, I think that that is a testament to the failure of the adults in their lives and the lack of conversations that are, you know, not taking place, I guess.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a great point. I'm going to go one step further on it when it comes to the taboo, which is sex in schools here in the US, right? So as much as this is just such a traumatic case, right, there's kids in this that some of them may have just been filming it because it's something that they were enjoying, that mob mentality where all of them were in it. Some kids were probably just curious. They had the word sex and they went in there with their phones and tried to find things out. And Anna brings up a very good point, is that when it comes to sex in this country, if you watch, I think it was a video that went viral on Facebook about how a lot of European countries show sex ed in school and how these videos, they are pretty obviously explicit, but they describe the severity and all the details that go into it and just allow kids to kind of make up their own mind and understand it for themselves. Whereas in this country, it was an article that I was reading recently. I think it was actually a Republican who was caught he was actually looking at porn whilst he was trying to, he took a screenshot of his own page and it had porn in the top. And he answered it by being like, I don't indulge in those adult things. What adult things? You're an adult. Like, porn is something that everyone knows about, and sex is something that everyone should know about. But it's this taboo, and it is often coming from the right wing.
Yes.
Where they take it as a taboo that they don't want to talk about. And that's how you're going to get these kids that are just curious.
Oh my
They
God.
don't know. They're just curious what's going on.
Francis, you just brought up such a great point, and I think that it helps complete the argument that I just made. Because think about the day and age that we live in. I mean, we have porn at our fingertips at all times, right? It's so easily accessible, whether it's through your mobile device or, you know, at your desktop at home. And a lot of these teenagers have watched porn. So think about it. If you are living in a red state where your child is not getting comprehensive sex ed and they don't know the realities of these very complex and important sexual issues, where are they getting their education from? They're getting their education from porn. They're getting their education from what their friends are telling them. They're getting their education from all the wrong places. So if you're going on YouPorn or whatever it is that, you know, they're logging onto to watch this porn, no one logs onto porn. I know that, okay? Just calm down. But whatever. If they're watching some, you know, hardcore porn scene and they think this is what sex is supposed to be like, it desensitizes them and makes them think that this is totally okay behavior.
Well, it removes the humanity from the act, just like you were saying before. It becomes animalistic. It becomes this thing where guys conquer women, and this is how they do it. And that's okay if you understand that it's porn. But if that is your educational tool, everything becomes super skewed. And I think that we did see some of that within what happened and how the students reacted, how so many students reacted. I also wonder if we could talk a little bit about sex trafficking, because that came up within this story. Yep. And I think it's important that we, you know, Francis, you pointed out in your opening remarks, we don't talk about that in this country. And I think that there is a little bit of misinformation that people think it's within an immigrant population, and that's not the case. Yeah. You know, So
let me give you guys some numbers, because I think that when it comes to sex trafficking, there's this idea that it doesn't happen in the United States, but it certainly does happen in the United States. Now, let me give you a number that'll blow your mind. So in 2012, the International Labor Organization estimated that there are as many as 20.9 million human trafficking victims worldwide. But also understand that that number is an underestimate, because it's very difficult to figure out what's happening in these, you know, covert situations. So oftentimes there are victims that never get reported, that we don't know about, and these cases aren't investigated enough. In the US, there were more than 4,000 cases of sex trafficking reported. 4,000 cases, okay, and that was in 2012. So there are some numbers behind it, but again, these numbers are not right because a lot of cases go unreported.
Yeah, and the troubling thing about that is that it's rare that we actually bring up this subject, as you mentioned, within the US, and we have an example here, which that will probably go hand in hand. You'll probably find out that the teachers and those involved maybe never even knew that this girl was involved in that before. So they were not aware that if something wasn't looking right, that they could maybe go and report it and go back to the parents and maybe be like, okay, I'm now aware of this situation, maybe keep an eye on this young girl. And what's so tragic about this situation, I think her mother has taken her out of school to try and preserve her and protect her from all the comments that are undoubtedly going to just go hand in hand with it. And that's the biggest tragedy of this whole thing, is this young girl's life now. She has already been through such a traumatic experience. She only knows how to really deal with adversity in one way. It's been kind of driven into her from a horrible way that sex is a way to kind of deal with things, and sex is a way of life that only means
making friends,
making
sort of
friends,
just,
right?
Yeah. It's just a way of life at the age of 15. It's heartbreaking.
So depressing.
And now with this story, it's going to go and it's going to have such a negative connotation to her, and she's only going to know how to deal with things in this way unless she gets the help that she needs. And how do you get the help that you need? If we are understanding and we become more educated on the subject. And it shouldn't just take kind of like news sources like us to bring this to light, but when they're writing the stories, and you mentioned it, people haven't covered this in the best way, they should be putting that as one of the headlines, is that she was involved in trafficking, and this is an issue in the US, and people need to bring it up.
Exactly. Look, that's not a sexy topic. It's not a sensational topic that's going to get you clicks and headlines. And so that's the reason why the fact that she was trafficked for 2 years is buried in the articles. It should be the top thing. Excuse me. Also, look, again, it's really difficult to come up with solid numbers of the amount of people that are victimized by this. But if you focus on minors specifically that are victimized by trafficking in the United States alone, trafficking.org says that there are 100,000 to 300,000 underage girls being sold in America. Okay, 1 out of 3 teens on the street will be lured toward prostitution within 48 hours of running away from home. So a lot of these people are runaways, and also minor victims were sold on average of 10 to 15 times a day, 6 days a week. Wow. So there are some studies on this, but again, a lot of these don't really have the right numbers because they're unreported.